meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. All right, first thing is approval of the agenda. Do we have any comments on the agenda, or do we have a motion to approve it?
I'd make a motion to approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? You're none. All right. Next up is approval of the minutes from the August 12th, 2024 meeting. Did anybody have any corrections upon reviewing those minutes? If not, I would motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
You're none.
Sorry. I didn't mean that. I'm an aye.
All right, that moves us into the public forum, which is time set aside for public comments on topics of concern to the HPC. Do we have anything from the public? We have people here. Hop on up to the mic.
This is me, Dave Carter, 709 Douglas. I may be preaching to the choir here tonight, but I wanted to get this on the record and make sure everybody knows what's going on. I gave Ray helped distribute a 3-page handout there, which has some sections of the code I copied off. And so if you start on the 3rd page, number 7 there at the top, headings on the previous page. This is powers and duties of the Historic Preservation Commission. And number 7 on the page 3, to review proposed zoning amendments that affect proposed or designated landmarks and historic districts. So that's in chapter 31, which is essentially, it outlines the whole preservation ordinance. Then on the first page, in chapter 29 of the municipal code, which is essentially the zoning ordinance, and this was enacted back in 2000 when the city completed about a 10-year process to redo the entire zoning, the whole ordinance, and redo the map throughout the city. This is one of the overlays that was created, and it's very short, but it has a specific purpose. I'm going to read it to you, so pardon me for that, but for the record, the Historic Preservation Overlay Zone is intended to recognize the establishment of the city's local historic districts. And at that time, the Old Town Historic District was it. And refers to section chapter 21 of the municipal code, the Historic Preservation Ordinance, and to promote the public interest in having a full and informed participation of the city's Historic Preservation Commission in the hearing of zoning applications potentially affecting the city's historic resources, that being primarily properties and the historic improvements on the properties. To fully meet this objective, the Historic Preservation Overlay Zone may include properties that are proximate to but not within one of the historic districts established by the municipal code. So it empowers the council to widen this zone enough that it includes nearby properties. Currently, it just tracks the Old Town Historic District boundaries. The procedures established by this section are intended to ensure the city's Historic Preservation Commission is specifically notified of all applications before the Planning and Zoning Commission or the Zoning Board of Adjustment respecting property within or proximate to the city's local historic district. That's pretty clear. So the procedures are Number 2, notice. And it's headed notice because it intends to give notice. With regard to zoning applications and proposed zoning ordinance amendments that affect proposed or designated landmarks and historic districts, the Historic Preservation Commission shall consider such applications and/or amendments prior to consideration by the Zoning Board of Adjustment or by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And that's plainly put. Then it goes on with a section number 3, and it talks about certificates of appropriateness. As provided by section 31(1) of the municipal code, and notwithstanding any uses otherwise permitted under an applicable base zone classification, no building or structure within a historic district established pursuant to chapter 31 of the municipal code may be erected, altered, demolished, or removed. And that's pretty much the way the certificates have been used, but it goes on to say, and no area within such chapter 31 historic district may be used for industrial, commercial, business, home industry, or occupational parking until a certificate of appropriateness has been issued for such activity by the Historic Preservation Commission. The requirement applies only to properties within the city's historic district. So it definitely assigns a purpose for certificates of appropriateness to be applied to govern uses as it delineates here and outlines beyond just physical alterations in construction. So the update is that there was a zoning text amendment heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission for amendment to the CEFCOD district, which encompasses nearly all of the historic district, as well as some additional property close to downtown, north of downtown here. That was done without any hearing by this commission. That has advanced to the city council, and the city council has had staff draft an ordinance to add an additional use to that overlay, which includes and overlays most of the historic district. So it definitely affects the historic district. And the council is going to vote on that first reading tomorrow night. I have filed an appeal of the opinion given to me by the planning director that this requirement does not apply to general zoning text amendments. And so the outcome down the road, of course, I'm sure someone will be enlightened, myself or the director. Do you allow questions at the Historic Preservation Commission, Ray?
Oh, yeah.
I'm welcome to entertain any questions.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Why did the planning and zone and housing director say that this guidance, these requirements didn't apply?
Well, I had written to him and copied the city manager and the council and suggested that they have the city attorney review these sections of the code. And the city attorney surprisingly came back and said that the zoning amendment was not affecting the historic district. It doesn't make sense to me. So historically, they have not pursued a hearing before the Historic Preservation Commission. I know prior to the current zoning, I was involved in some rezoning applications in the early 90s. And at that time, we did go before the Historic Preservation Commission first, and followed through and made our way through. And I suspect that after the current zoning was adopted in 2000, it wasn't very long until the longtime planning director left. There were a change, I think, of maybe 2 planning directors, fairly short order. I don't think the issue came up. I think the community was tired of discussing zoning. I don't think there were many challenges to the zoning. And we've now gotten down the road 20 years and there's pressures and entities that want to change things. And this is on the books. It applies. I believe it applies. We'll find out. But I think the Historic Preservation Commission should be aware of it. In many communities, the Historic Preservation Commission is the most powerful part of the planning process. And I think, powers and duties are delineated here in the code and in more than one place. And I think it's a power of the commission, but as well, it's a duty. So I encourage you to be aware of that.
Can you talk a bit about whether whether you're a voice of one or whether there's many people in the community who share your concern?
There's a lot of people in the neighborhood who are concerned, and this particular amendment affects, I think it's 350 some properties. A lot of those are homeowners, single family homes, which the whole purpose of the district, I won't get into the politics of it, is to preserve single family homes. But we generated a petition with close to 30% of the properties in opposition to the change. And we've yet to find out how the council is going to vote on this. But there is the challenge I've brought. There's opportunity. There's some other things that can be challenged. And I think it's important going forward that the commission recognizes this and exercises their power and performs their duty.
I have a question. Has the city attorney published anything explaining his reason?
He issued a memo to the council, and I have a copy of it. I'd be glad to supply it to you. So it should be available. I'm sure you could request it from the city attorney's office, or Ray could probably procure it for you. And yes, if you're interested, I'd encourage you to read it and see what you think of that opinion.
I'm interested.
And
Complicating things is that our attorney is also the city attorney. Right? We're represented by the city attorney.
correct. But you are independent. And the Historic Preservation Commission can make up their own mind, and you don't have enforcement power, but you can ask some questions, certainly.
Well, what would the process be if the commission wanted to go back to the city and say, hey, we think you didn't do this right. You rolled over our authorities, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it would be if the council would have to start over, or just what that would be. I'd have to check with the city attorney's office. But the first thing that has to be decided is the appeal, to the zoning board of adjustment. That'll occur in January.
As far as settling this issue,
Well, could we, I don't want to speak for you guys, but I mean, could we go back to the city as a commission and say, we don't understand why this happened the way it did
You can send a communication to the city council.
as a commission?
Yes.
There is the appeal that's going to the zoning board of adjustment, so I think things will be sorted out through that. But yeah, the commission you can always send a communication to city council.
Another question,
Sure.
what was the historical background for making this amendment to the zoning?
It's complicated. It involved a request by a social service provider who was functioning in the district as well as the overlay without the proper permits to had a desire to expand and purchased another property and looked into getting permits and found they were not allowed in the district. Additional social service providers have not been allowed in the district since the zoning change. And so the council granted their request to consider amending the text to allow more social service providers. There's more angles to it, but that's it, put simply. So, but if I want to supply Mr. Ewald, my communication to the planning department and then the memo back from the city attorney and Kelly Diekman's written letter to me clarifying his opinion. Shall I do that?
Well, it should
Send it through you?
Um,
All those documents are in a file
it
somewhere.
should go out to the entire commission. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll send you a communication with those
Okay.
documents and then you can forward it to the entire commission.
Okay.
Yeah. And then more details are in the council minutes and action forms and so forth if you want to delve into that as well.
Is there anything the commission would have to do before the city council meeting tomorrow in order to preserve?
They're proceeding without any input from the commission. I don't think they've had a public hearing and have advanced beyond that, so they're not obliged to take any public comments. And other than addressing a communication to the council members and the mayor, would be the only avenue, I think, at this time. And unless the commission voted on something tonight but
They
that's where
can't,
the
it's not
process
on
is.
their agenda
It's
though.
not on the agenda.
Not on the
yeah.
agenda, so you can't vote on that.
You
tonight.
can't do that, but
Yeah.
but you could comment individually to council people and the mayor. Thank you.
All right.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Ray, as member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, do you have any comments or insights on this
Well,
issue?
it was determined by the planning director that the Historic Preservation Commission, I haven't seen this memo, but that the Historic Preservation Commission was not required to review this.
But Ray, I emailed you when this came up last summer, and you told me that it didn't need to go in front of the Historic Preservation Commission because it was only for, the commission only cared about exteriors.
Yeah,
And-
for, it's a zoning change. So
But
it has to do with use. I mean, what was proposed has to do with use in a zone. And the Historic Preservation Commission is not involved in deciding what the use would be in the historic district. You review certificates of appropriateness, you have other powers and duties, but determining the use in a zone is not one of them. So,
and that's the basis of my
Yeah.
appeal.
yeah.
that interpretation. So, thank you.
All right.
I'll
Yes.
forward stuff to Ray and he can distribute it to you guys.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Carter, for expressing that to us tonight.
So can I comment on this? So I am currently working on the windows at 702 Clark. So I am intimately involved in the historic preservation. And when we've gone through introductions in the group, or we've talked about people's backgrounds in the group, my background, my professional background, but I have restored or flipped or lived in 12 different homes over my lifetime. I sat on a board for a fraternity at Iowa State that went through a major renovation about 15 years ago. And I'm now involved over here at 702 Clark. So I'm one of the people that is there Tuesdays and Thursdays working on windows. And we are taking the windows out and we are recaulking them. We are fixing the weights. They're all counterbalanced. Most of them are double hung. When we can find the correct and appropriate hardware, it's all replaced. The problem with the storms is the storm windows were all removed and replaced in the 70s with aluminum clad window coverings. They're not historically correct. There's no way to fix this. You know, it's a renovation that happened 50 years ago. But I also know what the mission is. I know what they're doing. I support them. I feel, I went to the library a couple weeks ago and listened to people express their concerns, both for and against. All I can tell you is from the historical preservation point, I'm involved. I sit on the commission. I'm the person up here who knows how to swing a hammer. We have had some discussions with some people at the city about future use of the house, and if nothing I'm doing impacts the future use of the house other than the comfort of the people that are using it. So we're just working on that. There has been talk about the city would require ADA accessible doorways, either in the front or the back. And we have asked, or I've brought up the question about change in ADA compliant doorways. How does that affect the historical preservation? And we have 125-year-old wooden doors on that house. And to be ADA compliant, they need to be wider than they are. And if we take them off, then to follow historical code, we would replace them with wooden doors. But to follow Ames City Fire Code, we have to have steel doors. So my point is, there's someone on site helping with the work who sits on this commission, and we're asking the appropriate questions, and nobody has changed anything on the exterior unless you walk by and you see some of those windows have primer on them, because we're trying to figure out if we're going to paint it in the spring. And if we paint it, we'd at least want the wood protected through the winter. So we have primed them in spots. But other than that, everything's being maintained, and
So the 702 Clark, that's the,
702 Clark, it's also referred to as the Orange House north of Fairway.
Right across from Fairway. So
But-
they operate today out of 709, and then they bought 702 to expand their operations.
but they're the subject of this.
I
amendment.
believe that that's the subject that he's talking about.
So are you,
And the way I understand it, the mayor has proposed, and I'm not here to bring in, question any of the council or anybody else, but I think there has been something proposed to change the zoning for that facility to be social services and to allow zoning, and it's strictly that one property, 702.
There were several different options that the council
Yes,
has looked at. And what
yes,
they ended up on was saying any property that abuts a piece of commercial property, which is basically a bunch of properties on 7th and a couple on Clark, but then they added on, but only one social service provider will be approved. So Romero House, if they get their paperwork in first, then, and this process plays out, they would be the one that would be approved.
and I don't know what the legality is. I'm just telling you that what my relationship is with them and that I'm aware of kind of what's going on.
and you're not suggesting that you want to recuse yourself from the issue?
I would recuse myself from the issue if there was a vote. So yeah, if you're going to vote as a group, I'm making my affiliation with them, making you aware of it at this time. And if my comments are inappropriate at the meeting, then strike them.
I don't think they're inappropriate.
No.
But I think it's a good idea that if we have somebody who has the insight and the knowledge, a little bit more in depth about what's going on, that they could express it. If there's a vote, then I would recuse myself from the vote.
Yeah, from what I've heard, I have no intention to suggest recusal.
Can I say something now? Is it okay? I didn't get permission before to speak. Is it all right if I make a comment, or is it closed?
Yeah, Laura will need your name and address for the minutes. Yeah,
Sure.
yep.
Do you want me to do that beforehand, or can I do it after? Shelley Orngard, I live at 928 Burnett. It's part of the single-family overlay, not technically part of the Old Town District. And yeah, this is a topic that has been really important to our neighborhood. First of all, just two comments. First of all, with regard to the last topic that was discussed, I really appreciate that the home is being restored, and it sounds like efforts made to be restored in a historically sensitive way in most cases. It would seem, though, if you're going to, did I understand correctly that the doorway would have to be ADA compliant, and
No,
that would,
it's being reviewed.
okay, that would affect the exterior, it seems to me, that the look on the exterior. So that's one thing. Then the other thing is just kind of a general comment. I wasn't really a part of the discussion, as Dave was, in making the historic district. But I'm well aware, as I know you are, of the motivations of the people who wanted to make it a historic district. And it seems to me that that was 30 years ago. And over the years, that recognition of the importance of our historic overlay and our historic district has been kind of forgotten. And I would hope that through these kinds of discussions that we begin to recognize again how important the historic aspect of our community is. You can't build a new historic building. And it's so vitally important that we preserve and protect the historic buildings that we have. So I think the work that you're doing is so very important. And I just want to thank you for your work. And I hope that you will also advocate for historic preservation here in Ames. So that's all I have to say.
Shelley, is this the only house in the historic district that is being converted into a like the use is being changed?
There are, well, of course, I think the topic of discussion for a lot of this is social service providers. And before the historic overlay, there were a number of group homes that existed and very fine old houses that were being taken down so that you could build apartment buildings. And that kind of erosion of the historic area is the reason for establishing the historic district and creating the commission that you're on. As you know, or I'm sure you know, there were social service providers before the single family overlay that were pre-existing, like YSS, and they were allowed to continue. But there are also other entities that are social service providers that haven't really registered with the city as social service providers. And so, you know, there are more than technically, I think, are probably allowed. That's my sense of it.
Thanks.
All right. I think if everybody is good with the information we've received, then we can close the public forum. Again, public forums for us to take in information. From that, we appreciate both of you coming in and talking to us today. Typically, we don't really act on things during the public forum just because it's not on our agenda for something for us to vote on, but we can absolutely, as a commission, everybody can act individually, but we can take this information and, talk to the people we see fit to get more information going forward on the subject as well. So with that, we will move on to item number 5 on our agenda, which is the CLG Annual Report 2024 Success.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes.
Is there any interest on the part of the commission to ask the city why they felt that the guidance that says if you're going to change, where it says to review proposed zoning amendments that affect the historic district, this number 7 on page 3, that wasn't followed? Is there any desire? It has nothing to do with
I think,
other housing.
Kate, real quick, my suggestion on that, what my suggestion there would be is that we can discuss additional items, but we would do it in the commission
Got
comments
it.
section of
Okay,
our
thank you.
meeting.
Sorry.
Yep, you're good. All right, so CLG Annual Report.
Okay, we're not actually going through the entire annual report tonight. We're just talking about the work plan and the work plan that we had for the past year and the work plan that the commission will have for the coming year, 2025. And look at what has been accomplished or what has not been accomplished out of the work plan from 2024, and then what you'd like to see in the work plan for 2025. So to give you a little bit of background, there's a certified local government program. It's a federal program administered by the state. And the city of Ames is a certified local government, has been since in the 1990s. And it makes us eligible for funding through grant programs that the state has and the federal government for preservation. And for example, the effort underway to put together a National Register nomination for the Chautauqua Park and Ridgewood subdivisions. We received a CLG grant to help fund that nomination, the preparation of that nomination. So that's through the CLG program. So to be a community that's in the certified local government program, you have to submit an annual report each year to the State Historic Preservation Office. And so as staff, we put that report together, but we consult with the commission as to what you see as wanting to have in the work plan for the coming year and looking at what has been done in the past year. So on the screen here, I've got question 7. It's in the annual report. It talks about historic preservation activities. What are our accomplishments in historic preservation planning? And they give some examples there of a preservation plan, development of a work plan, which we do each year. The preservation plan is something we use and review, but we don't do a new preservation plan each year, but it's updated every few years. Technical assistance, so that can be working with property owners in the local historic district, as well as historic landmarks, and if they want to make changes to the exterior of their homes or structures, that we work with them to understand what the regulations are for them to get what's called a certificate of appropriateness through the commission, or as approved by staff. There are some that staff can approve. And then public education programming, that can be training sessions offered to the public. It can be walking tours, open houses, lectures, preservation month activities, design guidelines and standards, those types of things. Design guidelines and standards are a separate item, but those are the things that go into the work program. And we'll look at last year's work program here in a minute. And then the question number 8 in the annual report has to do with issues, challenges, and successes. And just to kind of tell you what was in last year's report for successes. One was the intensive level survey of the Chautauqua Park and Ridgewood additions. That was completed and included 150 properties. That was for 2022. And then the city of Ames provides funding to the Ames Historical Museum for a variety of services, including education and research. That's another success that was in last year's report. The Historic Preservation Commission had a representative at the Preservation Iowa Summit held in Sioux City for 2023, and came back with information from that. And then the Historic Preservation webpage, it's part of the City of Ames webpage. A lot of information was added there, some studies that were done, surveys and so forth that people can now access. Those were the successes that were identified in last year's report. There's some of those could be included in this year's report, and there are others that would be new, we can talk about. So in looking at the 2024 work plan, there's a broad category here called educate the public concerning value and benefit of historic preservation. And you'll see a reference to goals and objectives. Those are from the comprehensive historic preservation plan that whatever item it includes that reference, it's to indicate that that item is supported by the historic preservation plan. Okay, so facilitate dissemination of historic preservation information. There are a number of bullets under that from last year. As I mentioned a minute ago, collaborate with the Ames History Museum. And in that year, there was a particular history event that the commission worked with the Ames History Museum. We did not do that this past year. Support engagement in support the public engagement meeting on the draft of the Chautauqua Park Ridgewood District nomination. That was completed. Continue to keep historic preservation web pages updated. As far as exploring hosting of the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, we really didn't get into that last year. That was in the work plan, but I can't really say that was pursued. Continue funding for training commission members. City council budgets so much money each year for training. That was continued into last year and will be again for this year. Participate in educational opportunities. There were Devon and myself that attended the Preserve Iowa Summit in Mount Pleasant this past year. So that would be in next year's work plan. We did have an awards program last year. There were 2 awards. One was for significant achievement in preservation. That was given to Ted Tedesco. And then there was another one that was given to 501. Let's see. Let me see. Just, I've got to find that information here quick.
I think it's 501 Main Street.
Main Street, yes, 501 Main Street, yep. There was an award given for their preservation of that building. And so there were 2 awards last year. And next month, the commission will be talking again about whether you want to have an awards program for this year. And typically, the awards are presented by the city council in May, but the award recipients are selected by the commission. And nominations are received in February. Continue membership in the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions. I do not think we're a member of that right now. That would be a discussion item. What the commission found when we were a member last year is it didn't seem as though we got a lot of benefit from it. So I believe we did not renew our membership in that because of that. Okay, moving on through the work plan here. Those were the education aspects of the plan. Then promote economic development and vitality of the city through historic preservation. There were 2 bullets under that. Review tax credit speaker opportunities for 2024. That could be one for 2025 as well. Continue granting certificates of appropriateness in a timely manner. That would also be included in next year's. Enhance municipal properties to protect historic resources and implement policies through identification, effective legislation, and effective and efficient regulatory measures. Continue review of Chapter 31. For that, we would need approval by the city council to allow city staff to work on that, because we do have a work plan also for the Planning and Housing Department approved by the city council, and they would have to approve any time that we spend on that item. So there'd need to be a communication from the commission to the council about that if you're interested in pursuing that. And then support energy savings and renewal in the city's climate action plan by providing comments on the role of historic preservation. And then continue to use the Ames Comprehensive Historic Preservation Plan as a working document, which is where a lot of these things come from, that their goals and objectives and action steps in that plan. Review the Ames Comprehensive Preservation Plan report and determine next year's priorities and work plan. And that's basically what we're doing tonight. And obtain approval from the city council for priorities determined by the commission. So when the commission puts together the work plan and staff finalizes the annual report, that goes to the city council for approval before it goes to the state historic preservation office. And so that would be going to the city council in late January, at their second meeting in January. And we will be back to the commission at your next meeting in January to talk more about the annual report. Okay, that's what we have from last year. If you have any ideas on items you'd like to include in the work plan for 2025, feel free to bring those up, and you can discuss them as a commission, and we can go from there.
I think a lot of those obviously will carry forward.
A number, yeah.
Doing the Preserve Iowa Summit, obviously keep that one in there.
Mm-hmm.
Funding and training for commission members, keep that in there. Really, it's probably easier to go through this and which ones do we think don't belong in 25. So I think we should keep the awards program. I know last year we didn't get a lot of nominations for it, but we did get a couple, so we got to
two.
recognize. So I think it doesn't hurt that we try it again in 25, and ultimately, if we don't get significant nominations, then you don't have to award, but we should at least keep trying to encourage people to nominate and recognize people and buildings that are doing well historically in our town. You touched on the Ray and the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, and that was kind of the discussion last year, is that it seemed like, we had paid dues for it, and then seemed like there was some miscommunication when we were trying to contact them to get services or info out of them on.
And we didn't really have much response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty minimal on their end, and it didn't come off as something that was really of value to us. So I would, obviously the rest of the council can speak to it too, but I would suggest probably striking that one off of there for the 25 plan. And then this year we didn't really do much of it in terms of, like it was mentioned on there, setting up a tax credit informational meeting of some sort for the public, and other public education opportunities. And we probably fell short on setting those up this year. As part of that, I was working on trying to get somebody in for it and never really got it to the finish line. But just because we fell short on it this year doesn't mean that we shouldn't have it next year and really put a focus on trying to get more information in front of the public on that. So I would suggest leaving that in there.
I have a question about the enhanced municipal policies to protect historic resources, blah, 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 that one. Is there a way we could do this so that it also looks at Chapter 31 and the requirement to use original materials and the energy efficiency of those materials, and see if there's some places where we could, rather than wait for people to come in and say, hey, I don't want to use this window because it's not energy efficient, can I use the substitute? We could be more proactive in that regard. Having replaced 1 million windows in my house, all the windows I put in are just terrible from an energy efficiency perspective. And so I'm wondering if we could do something in that regard to help try to seek more proactively materials to offer to people that would be consistent with the objectives of historic preservation in terms of appearance, but also be more energy efficient. Would that be something the commission would be interested in, focusing on that? If not, just tell me no and shut me down. That's fine too.
No, I think it's a good comment. I'm just trying to think, and maybe Ray could help point us. Would that be, trying to think if there's a specific spot in Chapter 31 that we would look at for putting something like that in? And as you mentioned before, then we would
Probably
request that
multiple
we
places.
get staff on
Yeah,
that.
the regulations
Oh.
as far as use of historic materials, yeah. That is one that you need to communicate with,
Yes.
with the council,
Yeah.
through a memo from the commission,
Okay.
and to get their okay with the
Mhm.
city staff working on that, since we have a work program. Yeah, that's a good example of one of those.
Were there any other items that stuck out for anyone as we read through the 24 plan? Or even anything unrelated to the 24 plan that you can think of that we'd like to take a look at in 25 or put an emphasis on?
Can you speak on what the, I guess what the intended outcome is for this, for us tonight? And what the time frame is? I know you said that our work plan will have to go to city council in January before it then goes to the state.
Right.
So are we looking to compile a finalized thing tonight, or what's the?
What I'll do is what I'm hearing from you tonight, I'll put a draft together of the report and then bring that back, with a 2025 work plan at the January meeting.
Mhm.
And have you look at it one more time, and then make a recommendation to the city council to approve the report for 2025, the CLG annual report. And then it will go to the city council at their second meeting, where they actually pass a resolution approving the report, and then we send it on to the state historic preservation office.
Can I perhaps make a request for,
Yeah.
maybe for next year? Would it be possible to get this information just sort of like present it to us in a November meeting so that we have a month to review and think on it, to then
Sure. Yeah.
come with more ideas to the December meeting, to then draft the plan and all of our successes and challenges, to then have something more finalized for January that we can then sign off on? Is that something that we could do in the future?
Yeah, I think we can. Yeah.
Okay.
One thing that we don't always know in November is exactly what we don't always get the report form from the state until December.
Mhm.
And but we certainly could be talking about the work plan. Yeah.
I think especially since a lot of this is like reflecting on how the existing plan went and what was,
Yes.
if there's
Right.
anything that we want to carry over.
Yeah.
You know, I think we have that already. So if we could get that maybe a little sooner, that way we can be thinking on it, because
Yeah. No, that's a good idea.
a weekend is kind of rough turnover to,
Yeah.
to like
It-
give,
it
to
is,
give
yeah.
the serious consideration I think that
Okay,
this deserves.
okay. Yeah, we can do that.
I think Melissa, those are great comments. And I think for this year, when we get to our meeting in January and we get that draft in front of us, I remember back to last year, I think we still have some leeway with that. It's not just a straight yes or no to the draft. We can still, like, when we get to that, talk about it. And if we have like, oh, we really wanted to add this item or delete this item, when
Yeah.
we do our motions on that, you can motion it on with the caveat that it includes this or strikes this and whatnot. So we will have some opportunity in January for amending that draft should anybody think of anything between now and then that they'd like to have included. All right. Anything else on that one for you, Ray?
That's all for me.
Awesome. All right. If everybody's good with that topic, then we will move on to commission comments. So now would be the time for open forum and comments amongst commission members. So Kate, we are more than welcome to jump back into that subject here. Absolutely. So,
Okay. I think it's important that cities follow procedures, and if they have a procedure, they ought to follow it. And so I think if the Historic Preservation Committee is going to be in existence and there are rules that say this is how the process goes, then we ought to follow it. And when the city doesn't follow it for whatever reason, I think we need to say to the city, hey, you know, that was a process foul. You didn't do what you're supposed to do. We think that, we think something needs to happen, whether it's, you need to refresh your procedures and make sure you know what you're doing, or we need to take another look at that issue because the process said we were supposed to do it or something. I don't think we should just let this happen. Otherwise, we're not fulfilling our responsibilities as a commission. That's my view. And so I'm wondering if you guys feel that way, and if you do, whether we should send a communication to the council that reminds them of what the regulations say, what our role is, and request that they follow that. And I would say, before they finish voting on this issue before them, they need to go through the process. That would be my proposal.
I
Yeah.
generally agree with that, but I think we need more information, especially the memo from the city attorney explaining why he decided the way he did. To just,
So then maybe it's two parts. Maybe in general, we'd say, hey, don't forget, you got this process, let's follow it, make sure we follow it in the future.
right.
And in this case, we'd like to understand why you thought it wasn't necessary at this
Right.
point. Okay, yeah, I like that.
yeah. And I think that would be the intent of it, is obviously just flagging that, hey, there's ordinance that sounds like it says that we're supposed to see this. We were not made aware of it. And I think the sticking point for me on that is not like, I understand that planning and all of the city departments, and it's written into a lot of codes that there's stuff that they need to streamline. Otherwise, they can't bring every single thing to a commission. So I understand that they make decisions or rulings on that based on how they read it. But it's more, I think, the fact that they made by the sounds of it, I don't have all the info, that they made a decision that, oh, this doesn't need to go in front of the HPC, but they still didn't inform us of that. When they make that decision, I think they should still at least say, hey, this is a subject matter that came up, but due to this and this, we feel it's not supposed to go in front of the HPC. So we at least have an opportunity to go, well, we disagree. We think we are supposed to be talking on this and can have a further conversation on that, but it wasn't presented to us in that way. So, yeah. So I think that would be one way in which to direct the conversation with them. But
And I think I agree with that, and that like it explicitly says here that, one of the powers of the commission is to review. So like, we're not even approving it.
yeah,
We don't have the power to
Yeah.
approve or do anything. It's just, I think being aware of it at the very
Mhm.
least is probably an important step that I think was skipped or omitted in this instance.
Yeah, and I agree with the phrasing of that we have the, opportunity to review. It's, it's so we have it's saved that we have the opportunity to express our opinion as a Historic Preservation Commission on something and get our voice in with the council. And, however much weight that bears with the council on each particular subject matter is theirs to determine, but at least we get the opportunity to express how we feel from, our realm within the city. Ray, for sending a memo, in this case to the city council, but really to any other commission or board, is that something that we need to vote on? And is that something we're able to do during commission comments? Or is the simplicity of sending a memo something we're allowed to just agree upon that, hey, okay, one of us will reach out and contact?
I think you should vote.
Okay.
Yeah. That way it's clear that it's
Yeah.
coming from the commission.
That it's mhm.
Mhm.
All right. All right, is there any other, before we get too deep into whether we vote on something or not, is there any other comments or discussion on that?
Are we allowed to vote on that then? Since it's not we're not,
Yeah, taking action on,
it's not a big thing. It's
yeah, that's a good question. It's
internal-
a good question. I was thinking about the same thing. Yeah, as to whether, you can always communicate with the city council,
Yeah.
but,
Mhm.
yeah, you can't make a recommendation. Yeah, you wouldn't,
Yeah,
because that's not on the agenda.
yeah, absolutely.
But you could vote to send a communication to city council.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, ask the question. Yeah,
Or state our concern.
sure. Yeah.
All right. Now, I guess in that case, if there's no other discussion on the topic or any other commission comments, just working on how we would phrase this, but I guess I would propose it to make a motion that we as the Historic Preservation Commission sends a memo to the city council identifying that we were made aware tonight of this particular council agenda item and have concern whether we were should have been notified of such and given the opportunity to review prior to this council meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Same sign.
All right. I guess next up from there would be staff comments, just to wrap up the commission comments there. Since we had a majority for sending the memo, I think typically on the memos, they come addressed from chairperson, so I took some notes here. If everybody's okay with it, I can type up a memo and get it to Ray for submitting to the council, but if there's anybody else that wants to, we can open that up. Okay. All right. From there, we will move on to staff comments.
The National Register nomination for Chautauqua Park and Ridgewood Edition. There was a meeting on that recently, and that will be sent down to the State Historic Preservation Office. If it wasn't today, it will be either tomorrow or the next day for their review. And then they send comments back to our consultant, and then our consultant makes adjustments to the nomination as directed by the State Historic Preservation Office, and then sends it back. And the State Nominations Review Committee will then consider it at a meeting in June. So it takes a while before this is all completed, but the nomination, the draft has been prepared, and so just about ready to send it down to the state. So that's a big step. And so the consultants have made a lot of progress with that.
Mhm.
That's all I have for now.
Sounds good. With staff comments coming to a close, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hear none. That adjourns this meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission.